there are 4 different ways nerves can pick up sensation, 4 different somatoreceptors that pick up things from slow movement to high frequency vibration. So I added vibration and percussion to it to hit all 4 ranges.
A lot of people think massage is just something you do to relax and rejuvenate, but especially your high system, how does it contribute to brain health and neuroplasticity?
When they gently vibrated here and here on the cheeks, it could as much as triple the throughput of the cerebrospinal fluid. What happens when you get older is the cerebrospinal fluid does not clear as quickly, and you get a buildup of toxins and proteins, and those accumulated toxins appear to be related to a lot of the pathologies of different neurological diseases. So it's basically too much junk builds up and it screws stuff up in your brain. But by gently stimulating certain areas, you can profoundly increase the cerebrospinal fluid exchange to clean your brain.
And it's a double win because it helps to strengthen the muscles in the face and reduce the signs of aging.
Welcome to the Brain Fitness Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Patrick Porter. Please join us on our mission to better 1 billion brains. Enjoy the episode and remember to share it with your family and friends.
Welcome back to the Brain Fitness Podcast with Dr. Patrick Porter. In today's episode, we're diving deep into the intersection of neuroscience, intimacy, innovation with a remarkable guest. We have 2, Wendy and Steve McGough. Steve is the co-founder of Women in Couples Wellness and the co-creator of the High Massage System, which I own. So if you're wondering, does Dr. Porter use this? Yes, we have it here at our home. And with a background in biochemistry from UNC Chapel Hill and advanced research neuroscientist, he spent over 15 years helping thousands of women and couples, improving pelvic health, intimacy, and fertility. Steve's work blends cutting-edge science with time-tested natural practices, and his insights into neurophysiology and human sexuality are reshaping how we think about core health, stress recovery, and even relationship-based brain performance. Whether you're seeking deeper connections or a better brain today's episode is going to be different for you. You're going to start thinking differently about intimacy and what's going on. So let's get started. Steve and Wendy, thanks for being on the call.
Well, thanks. Basically, it came from a tragedy. We weren't expecting to be in this field, actually. I'd worked in neuroscience previously in research, and in the tech industry, but my wife and I Wendy and I tried to get pregnant for 5 years and finally did, but 2 months before the due date, she was exposed to antibiotic-resistant infection visiting my mom in the hospital, and she became deathly ill within a couple weeks, and they had to do an emergency C-section because little boy Luke's heart was beating too slow, and he passed away that day. But the Wendy now was with tissue adhesions that had come from her uterus reopening and being so ill during all that time. And we were trying to figure out a way to hopefully have her not have to have surgery, because apparently 80% of the time the surgeries reconnect anyhow, so it's a never-ending loop. And through a long process that's stranger than I could have ever imagined, I ended up coming up with a percussive amplitude that appears to resonate with connective tissue. The way I tested it, I would use like the big ball things that pound your muscle hard on my forearm, the palmaris longus, and it would pound really hard locally, but it wouldn't travel far. The weaker ones would go a good bit farther, but they were still weak. And I found that a more powerful percussive massager with the right amplitude, because I literally had a gadget and I cut it apart and I was changing it, would go up and resonate and cause my fingertip to shake. And so I tried that on Wendy's belly, and that did resolve the issue she was having. She was having a very dangerous issue with potential bowel obstruction happening, and also the issue of the adhesions. But where it got totally unexpected and sent us on a major career shift is one afternoon, it was Sunday afternoon, I was holding it on her belly, and this sounded like a lawnmower. It was a big contraption in a PVC tube, and suddenly she turns pink. I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she's like, yeah, I'm fine, leave it there. And then she turns red, and I'm like, "I'm going to stop." She's like, no, leave it there. And a second later, she has an orgasm, from her abdomen with this lawnmower contraction. And I'm
he's
just
like, I've got to science the heck out of this.
Like, I'd worked in neuroscience research. I'd been working on a PhD in physiology, and there was no nerve up there. I mean, you got your hypogastric nerve, you got pudendal nerve lower, but what the heck is up there? And and again, it's a bizarre process because I took it back to the neuroscience center where I'd worked, and they all basically said that is flat out amazing, good luck. And nobody would touch it because of the side effect. We were having issues, with a whole host of things with medical research for that because nobody wanted to. Utter frustration. Here's the thing. It was helping women, or at least women were saying it was helping them with their urinary incontinence. And one woman with urinary tract, can't make any medical claims about that yet, but because we had a bigger device that we'd built that Wendy had some women that she knew tested. And
several women wanted the keys to our garage.
Yeah, and well, it was crazy. I'd done patent work before, so I said, can you sign this NDA, blah, 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 and they're like, yeah, sure. But so I finally, because I was in a tech company now, and I'm trying to get this thing commercialized, and a good friend of mine who's a very, very wealthy guy took me out to lunch because I'd been an advisor for some VCs. They'd ask about technology and get my opinion on it, for companies they're going to invest in. And he's like, here's the deal, Steve. I know you've been through rough times with your wife and losing your son and all, but if you keep pushing this crazy contraption, it's going to destroy your business. And I had a government software company. And he said, when your competition find out, and they will, they will eat you alive. And so that's the bad news. The good news is I've got a solution. I talked to the guys, and you will lay low for about 3 months. You'll put that thing on the shelf. You'll never speak of it again. The party line will be you had a midlife crisis from all this stress, losing your child and your wife being so sick, and come back in 3 months and you're golden. It's all cool. So I'm kind of like leaving lunch. I go home and I talk to Wendy, and she's a little fatalistic, and she's like, well, if we made it to 80, would we always wonder if it could truly help these women? And I'm like, yeah, but pretty big software company I had. And then she said, well, if Luke had lived, because it looked like we wouldn't be able to have children from that point on, what would he be more proud of after we're gone? So I resigned from the company the next week and started this crazy adventure. And the initially we couldn't get any traction in the medical side because of the side effect of it, which I didn't even understand why it was happening. That was the crazy thing. Later, to fast forward, we did find, fast forward 6 patents, and both of us studying clinical sexology or reproductive physiology, getting doctorates in that. Barry Komisarak at Rutgers had worked with a lady named Beverly Whipple. Frankly, they should have gotten the Nobel Prize, in my opinion. Maybe they will. I don't know. But Beverly had been a nurse for women she was a paraplegic nurse and focusing on gynecological issues. And she went to Barry and told him that, these women that she'd worked with claimed they could experience orgasm, even though they could feel nothing below their rib cage. And Barry had done functional MRI on the brain during intimate and orgasmic states in men and women. So they got their husbands in there with a non-metallic device and stimulated them in an fMRI, and lo and behold, it was a branch of the vagus nerve that would light up, go into the basal nucleus of the brainstem, and then take a secondary path around. And they're speculating, and also massive oxytocin release happens with that. Oxytocin release also appears to stimulate that, and it induces uterine contractions. So the speculation is this is the first wiring we had for giving birth. But apparently vibrating the belly at certain frequencies will stimulate the distal branch of that vagus nerve and induce that response. So at least later I had an answer to that. But what I ended up doing, because I was so frustrated, that we got stonewalled everywhere we turned, I thought, okay, well, we'll make a stimulation product. So I got out my anatomy books, and I'm like, you got pudendal nerve, you got your hypogastric nerve, you got, I later characterized the sacral plexus on each side. Long story about that. Basically I optimized it for every nerve I could find, plus this undefined nerve. And there are 4 different ways nerves can pick up sensation, 4 different somatoreceptors that pick up things from slow movement to high frequency vibration. So I added vibration and percussion to it to hit all 4 ranges. So we came up with a tool that worked over clothing that was very, very effective. And its original purpose, was for tissue adhesions. There'd already been patent work in that, but urinary incontinence and urinary tract infections was a huge opportunity for helping people. but we couldn't go that path, so we went the adult path first. And what we ended up doing after our first crowdfunding failed, and then we successfully crowdfunded in 2018 the second one. The first guy that worked with us, our investor, is the manufacturer. He's a genius manufacturer, and we're the only company he's ever personally invested in out of about 1,000 things he'd done. And so we successfully delivered. Venture capital group, amazing firm, gave us a seed fund later for our first manufacturer run after we'd done our crowdfunding, and off we went. But what we found was basically it worked really well in the adult side, but there was a lot of resistance in the wellness space, even though that was its purpose. And society is a very perplexing thing. So I'd done a lot with massage, so I went back and said, well, what else can we use this for? And the crazy thing is the percussive heads, which are optimized to go a certain distance in the pelvic area, line up absolutely perfectly.
Like the golden ratio.
At different spots on your body. So, and as part of my doctoral work, I had taken Masters and Johnson's sensate focus technique, which was a technique they developed for anorgasmia, and I'd mapped it to the nervous system. And so I went back and I redesigned a method that was amazingly effective at helping people relax. So circling back to the original, I'm often long-winded, the original question of how does this impact brain health? Well, massage in itself can help you relax and improve the health of the body, and that's good. But what's been found more recently, which is really exciting, is out of Korea. Studies first in 2019 found that the cerebrospinal fluid that's produced, basically that bathes the brain and the central nervous system, it is removed in certain areas. And what they found, in fact, they even followed up in June of this year, showing that there are patches behind the eyes, inside the skull, and at the base of the skull, and a few strips along the spine, that it actually transfers it from the internal area through what's called the glymphatic network, or the glymphatic system, into your lymphatic system. That was cool to learn, but what really was interesting is when they gently vibrated here and here on the cheeks, it could as much as triple the throughput of the cerebrospinal fluid. And older animals, they looked at rats and monkeys in the first study. I believe they're repeating this in human studies now in Korea. What happens when you get older is the cerebrospinal fluid does not clear as quickly, and you get a buildup of toxins and proteins. And those accumulated toxins appear to be related to a lot of the pathologies of different neurological diseases. So it's basically too much junk builds up, and it screws stuff up in your brain. But by gently stimulating certain areas, you can profoundly increase the cerebrospinal fluid exchange to clean your brain.
And it's a double win because it helps to strengthen the muscles in the face and reduce the signs of aging.
Yes, which we never use percussion anywhere on the face or neck or anything like that.
Just the lower vibe guide.
The lower, just on setting 1 or 2 is a similar frequency to what they were using in the study.
That's great. And you often speak about core health when you're giving talks and things of that nature. Can you break that down for us and what it really means and how it impacts everything from intimacy, connection to professional performance?
Yes, core health came from dealing with women who dealt with traumatic injuries and anorgasmia from really bad experiences in life. And what I found was everybody has a certain degree of ability to manage and handle stress each day. And if you have more stress than, and you mitigate stress by either redefining what it means or you have recovery methods like going to sleep each night. That's the main way we manage stress.
Using the brain tap before bed.
And that's actually an excellent point, because another thing that increases cerebrospinal fluid interchange is gamma frequency stimulation, which you guys do, which is very so that's so you're way ahead of the curve, on that. So but basically core health is your ability to rebound to stress and your ability to manage stress. And when you have that capability, you sleep better at night and you can think more clearly in the day. And the massage routines we have are specifically designed to target the areas that, what I found with women with anorgasmia was they would always be tense in their shoulders and their lower back, and then there'd be a band of muscle in the rear that was tense. And that corresponds to where the branches of the vagus nerve go through the trap muscles. You've got your lumbar plexus in your lower back, and your sacral nerves, which are parasympathetic also, go out, but they go back together in two little, basically, nodes in each buttocks. And there was a tension there. So basically, if you can relax those muscles, it significantly, in our in-house studies, improves heart rate variability, improves sleep, and profoundly improves relaxation. And what we've been able to develop from that is a self-care routine that you do each night before bed, where you massage at certain spots. Only takes a couple minutes. And it helps relax the muscles that, when they're tense, inhibit your ability to have your parasympathetic nervous system do what it needs to do as you sleep. Because recently, Brian Johnson has been talking a great deal about this, the longevity guy, that one of the most critical markers for both longevity and for pathology is how low your heart rate is when you go to bed and how much it drops off as you sleep. And people that are locked in a hyper-stress state, it takes them longer to fall asleep and their heart rate stays higher, and they just don't get the recovery at night that they need. So the core health program is just a simple routine for self-care to get your body so it can recover at night. Now, for couples, we have something called the 3-step method, which literally hundreds of couples have said it saved their relationship. And what that is, this is designed to be used if you want entirely over clothing. I know it looks like a Smurf or something, but it's kind of crazy.
For gonzo, some people called it gonzo.
Yeah, it's it's many names for it. But the 3-step method is a 15-minute massage. You promise each other, you promise your partner you'll do it for them on one day, and then on another day they do it for you. And it's just those key points that activate the parasympathetic nervous system.
And you do it different days so you can completely relax, and then on the other day your partner can completely relax.
And it produces a really interesting phenomenon, because initially partners look forward to their experience, because as adults we don't get taken care of that much, not where we're the center of it. So that's your day that you can really look forward to things. But what happens over time, as you learn new techniques, you get curious how your partner is going to respond to you taking care of them. I've seen that so many times, and it invokes a sensation or an emotion that Sanskrit has, I think, 96 words for love, or for the different emotions of love. English has one, and it's defined by context. Yeah, it's really interesting what happens because English has just one word for love, and it's defined by context, whereas other languages, Greek and Sanskrit in particular, I believe has 96 words. They have a word for a particular emotion called mudita. I may not be pronouncing that right, but mudita is the pleasure you get when you see your partner experiencing joy. And couples initially begin kind of selfishly wanting their experience, but later they start looking forward to how their partner is going to respond. And if you can get that to catch, it's like you're lighting a fire that just gets stronger and stronger throughout their relationship. And the benefits as far as improved heart rate variability, the whole host of things that are health parameters go up when they take care of each other that way each week. So that's a big benefit.
And one of the best quotes was one of our customers said, he felt like he could get through just about anything knowing he was going to have a relaxing massage and enjoy giving relaxing massage to his partner the next day. So it actually kind of increases people's ability to deal with what heads their way in life or stress levels.
Yeah. I think of massage systems out there. We met again we meet each other all the time at different conventions and things like that. There's other massagers out there, people that do it. The high method is different in a way that you call it percussive shear waves. So explain to me, I have a lot of information about neuroscience, but I've never heard percussion shear waves. So maybe you can explain to me what's happening and why that is so important and why it's different, because people might be thinking, well, I'll just get a massager at Walmart and do this program.
Sure, and that's a totally valid question that people would ask. The percussive shear waves are where you have percussion going up and down, and you also have angular motion side to side. And when you combine the vibration and the percussion together, it produces a different result that stimulates the nerves in a different way. It basically talks to them, it sends more data at the same time. Now, as far as how the device is different, we've got patents on the design of it for pelvic massage for women. So there's a very unique approach to that. Also, the amplitude is optimized to travel more gently but deeper through the tissue. So it gives you a better massage as far as the relaxation, but it's not as forceful as other massagers. So those are the physical differences, but the biggest distinction on top of that is we do a specific routine that instead of just giving you a massage gun and saying, here, use this after you work out, you learn a specific sequence to do on yourself and on your partner that targets your parasympathetic nervous system as well. There are intimate techniques. We got doctorates in human sexuality that can trigger there are 3 different classes of female orgasm, and we can trigger all 3 classes independently for that. For men, it can stimulate the prostate externally and many other things that most guys have never experienced before. For that weekly massage that couples give each other, they do the parasympathetic massage so they can relax, but they also, if they want, finish it with an intimate experience. And that's something we have a little process couples go through to make sure they're on the same page for that, because sometimes one partner doesn't want to do that or whatever, and we have a very good way to explain why that's essential. But we say if couples will do that for at least 30 days, it'll really change things, and inevitably they always want to keep doing it. Now that does, the 3-step method is the foundation for a fertility program also that we have that helps basically induce relaxation, because people are so stressed out these days. They have what's called the hypothalamic pituitary and adrenal axis that is constantly making cortisol. But you also have your hypothalamic pituitary ovarian and hypothalamic pituitary testicular axis. It's signaling for your cycling for that. But if if you make too much cortisol, you'd basically screw things up. That's the long story short. So
eventually it won't be working anymore. Yeah, they'll have adrenal fatigue, and they'll have attitude or something, and their nervous system will break down, right? So you're uniquely qualified, right? You're trained as a neuroscientist, human sexuality. You don't see those two combining very often, I can tell you. You haven't seen, they kind of stay at the different sides of the library there. But from a brain perspective, what happens during these altered states? Because people experience things like in Tantra and Taoist yoga, and they unlock deeper connection and even business success doing this. So tell me a little bit about what's going on there and what you found when you combined this neuroscience with human sexuality.
Well, it's very interesting. And in all honesty, I had no intention of merging the two. Looking back at it, this kind of happened. I started studying Tai Chi.
I tell you right now, I'm really happy to hear that women also have sex on the brain. So,
starts in the mind, right? Yes. Pretty much everything starts in the mind.
And once you get it going, it's a wonderful thing. It's definitely But I started studying Tai Chi when I was 8, and my teacher, when I was I think 11, gave me a book by Mantak Chia on Taoist yoga, which is basically a Chinese form of what they probably call Tantra here in America. So I'd studied that for a while, but then when we discovered the high phenomenon, and we got access to other ways to study things, it really made it much more interesting, because taking that 3-step method that couples do and using it as a ritual to do certain breathing exercises together afterwards to get in sync, and practices that have metaphysical meanings, in the Asian context. But
and that positive feedback loop, staring into each other's eyes with the pupils dilated.
Yes, it's when your pupils dilate, your partner's pupils dilate, and it keeps going back and forth. And it induces states that appear to be alpha brainwave states, theta brainwave states. But what's interesting is it's combined with gamma.
Well, your eyes also transmit the most biophotons. So you're sharing biophotons back and forth because the eyes have the most mitochondria. So they're doing that. So when you're gazing in somebody's eyes, your brain, it's almost like you're hardwiring to that person instead of, it's a different form of touch. They do that in seminars all the time to show people the deeper connection you have, not saying a word, just looking into the other person's eyes, and you get a deeper understanding of that person. So, yeah, you can see with autistic kids and things like that, they don't look into somebody's eyes because they feel that it's too much information for them. They don't know how to process that high gamma and those other brainwave frequencies.
That's really fascinating, Dr. Porter. That's something I didn't know that. So I'm as always, I'm learning stuff with you. It's really cool. The thing that's really neat about creating those states, though, is as far as solving challenges, people talk about inductive and deductive reasoning, or Elon Musk. And with inductive reasoning, you already have an assumption of how things should be, and then you make things fit into that model. With deductive, you have no assumption, and then you try to form an assumption from what you see. Elon Musk also calls that first principles thinking. But the reason that's important is if you're trying to solve a problem, it may be you haven't asked the right question. And the analogy that people have given in the past is 2,000 years ago, we could have cell phones. There's no reason we couldn't. We have all the materials. Two things were missing. Number one, the notion that you would even need it. And number two, the ability to make it if you did think you needed it. And when we approach questions in life, a guy named Price Pritchard, he's a business management consultant. He wrote a book called We Squared, or U Squared, which is very interesting. He talked about how he was sitting at a restaurant one day at a hotel he was doing something at, and he saw this fly desperately banging against the window. And the fly kept trying harder and harder, to get out the window. But there was an open window maybe 20 feet away. Well, he went up and gave his speech or whatever and came back to that restaurant at the end of the day, and the fly was dead on the windowsill. And he thought, well, if that fly could just have stepped back and realized there was an open window on the other side, it would have been so easy to go that way. But it didn't. And what these rituals and practices from different traditions do is they show couples ways to alter their way they see the world and their mental state. They get into that alpha state or that theta state while they've got the enhanced gamma. And I guess one analogy that we can give, my uncle, my dad's brother, invented a whole fleet of medical products, respirators. Also, he was a baby heart surgeon, a pediatric thoracic surgeon. He spent his entire career working usually 6 days a week in that surgery, had all these devices that saved so many lives. But then at the end of his career, an injection was made that they could give babies that had that particular issue that would solve the heart condition. And he knew a lot about the hormone signaling, but he had never asked that question. So now he created many wonderful things that help people. But my point there is these practices that people usually associate with woo-woo or with sometimes people are attracted to that because it gives them an excuse to have the practice because they're putting a different label on it. But they are very powerful ways to alter the way you see the world. And we have a little program we call Sensual Success, where we take the concepts that Napoleon Hill talked about. He was a big fan of sexual drive for business. He just didn't really talk about it. Where you set out your shared goals together, you make sure you get on the same page, and you do certain practices once a week that helps you distill and crystallize your vision for that. So I guess circling back,
all the ancient rishis, they people don't realize they invented yoga so that the kings could have sex, right? But then they realized that when the body is good, the brain, basically the body's designed to enlighten, but we need energy, and we have such a sexual taboo that people don't understand that it's a part of our nature. Just because a preacher, teacher, brother, sister, mother, father told you it was a bad thing doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It could be, like you said, there are some people abusing it and using it in wrong ways. But when you're in an intimate relationship and you're doing something, there's a synergy there that they actually call there's a sacred sexuality, they call it in the Vedas, where there's something more happening. That's why casual sex isn't recommended, because there's a connection. We all know the quantum connections now that we have, and all these things going on. So it's so important for people to understand. I think now just us talking about it here, people are probably going to say, Dr. Porter talking about this, because I'm usually not talking about these kind of things, right? But they're interesting to me because I know I've studied also Tai Chi. I spent a couple of months in Wudong where Tai Chi started in Taekwondo, and a friend of mine is a Tai Chi master, and he comes and visits. He's always at our seminars. Next seminar we do, you're going to have to be at the brain camp to show people.
Yes.
You can come to the research lab too. I'd love to, even some of the things we can do that aren't sexual that we can measure. We have a lot of different measurement devices. We could give you some real good data. And
we're close to each other too.
Yeah. If you're down in Wilmington, come on up and we could spend the day and we could take you through brain camp, we call it, and you could see how we can integrate this tool into that, because I think, like you're saying, with the vagus nerve, stimulating that vagus nerve, it's so important. So tell me a little bit about why it's so important to have physical intervention. Because, of course, we're doing the mind, we have brain tap, and everybody, we believe in the physical movement. There's got to be movement in the body. Movement is life. So tell me a little bit about how this works with, really, the nervous system. People don't realize the body keeps score. And it keeps score through pain, through suffering. It's the scorecard. So if you don't like to keep playing that game, you got to take the scorecard off the table. So tell us a little bit about how this works while in your reboot process.
Well, the biggest thing that happens is the body basically will get locked into a positive, some negative things will get locked in a positive feedback loop where they perpetually make their negative stuff stronger and stronger.
And what's crazy is a lot of people don't think about they get positive rewards from the negative as well as the positive.
Yes. The brain doesn't care if it's positive or there was actually a book back in the 70s when my dad first got help and he made us all read it. It was called Strokes. And people are either going to get positive strokes or negative strokes, because the brain just wants to be stroked, the kid wants to be stroked, or however you want to think. Our nervous system wants to have that feedback and wants to have that connection, really. And if it has to come in a negative way, it's going to come. And the pain and the pleasure centers, which Steve, they're not that far apart, so that's why these people get crazy with pain and they feel pleasure, because it's cyclic, right?
Yes.
So as we work on these things, so as we wrap up the call, because we're getting close to the end of it, I have a few other questions, though, from what you said earlier that I want to clarify for myself, but also I think the listeners might have it. You said something about what happens in the bedroom, especially around sleep and heart rate, and is one of the best predictors of health. And we know sleep is, you need stress resilience, which your device does. It helps to get rid of the physiological stress you're holding in your body, and it's a physical thing. People need to understand that it's not a mental thing. If you go to your doctor and say it's all in your mind, no, your mind manifested in your body, and it's showing up as a physiological effect that is actually creating its own atmosphere, if you will. It's creating its own environment. So we need to disrupt that. But tell us a little bit about this predictor of health, and explain resting heart rate before you go to sleep, and how much sleep matters to you, because I have a theory on that. I just want to see what yours is.
Well, as far as the predictor for health, this has primarily come from more recent studies where they looked at, they had biometric monitoring devices to measure heart rate, and several different studies have been done, but they looked at how long it took you, what your heart rate was when you're going to bed, how long it took you to basically wind down and fall asleep, and then what your heart rate was, when you went through the different sleep cycles. And it was found that people that had better heart rate variability and that their heart would slow down before bed. I mean, if they watched a psycho movie or something right before bed, and,
probably go way up,
and drank coffee and and the blue light and all that fun stuff, then the process wouldn't work as good. But basically, I guess the best analogy for that is our bodies are designed to have highly stressed states and hopefully run away from the bear or whatever it was, and then have relaxation recovery states. But modern living makes our highly stressed states never go away. Mm-hmm. And it produces the opportunities for all sorts of issues, because at night, when you go through your 90-minute sleep cycle, or assuming that is the, people debate about that, but particularly at and it varies between 3 and 4 in the morning, the adrenal glands produce DHEA, and that produces your store for the day. And DHEA is the building block for testosterone, for estrogen, for progesterone, and for cortisol. And if you, I'm kind of jumping a track here, but talking about the heartbeat, but if you wake up at 3 in the morning and then can't fall back asleep, and every single little thing, everything in the world that you can imagine going wrong is going on in your head, and then you're exhausted in the morning, basically what's happening is you're getting more and more locked into a hyper-stress state where normally it should be a slow ramp up of cortisol, starting 3 or 4, dripping up and peaking, 6, 7, 8 in the morning to wake you up. You get a surge of it. The challenge where the pathology happens with that is if you get that surge right when your adrenals are supposed to be making the DHEA that you're going to use for the day, later in the day, you won't have the resources you need to make the other hormones you need. And the brain is going to be stressed from that, producing more response for cortisol. And it gets you in a very nasty positive feedback loop, a negative positive feedback loop. That, I believe, is a major cause of fertility problems in the modern world today. But as far as the amount of sleep, I think it varies on the person, but most people tend to think at least 7 hours of sleep, 8 hours, although I have known some practitioners of certain Asian, Chun Yi Lin, an amazing Qigong master, he usually only gets, if I understand correct, 3 or 4 hours of sleep a night. But when he does sleep, of course he meditates a lot too, and he's probably getting recovery there too. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, what we find is that longevity studies show 6.5 hours, but it has to be efficient sleep. 1 hour of deep sleep so that glial lymphatic system you're talking about gets activated. And those glia cells get washed and you get the disconnection so you can have reconnections in the morning. If not, those connections stay and they wonder why they're thinking the same thoughts they thought yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And then, but we need 2 hours of REM sleep. I always tell people you get more neurological activity when you sleep than when you're awake. We think we're thinking, but we're not really thinking. When we're sleeping, we're thinking. Our body is doing all its repairs, it's doing everything, it's processing our day and all of those things. So it's super important. And like you said, if you have a sleep ritual with the high device, the massager, then we can activate the parasympathetic. Most people are in sympathetic lock, is what I call it, because we're designed, like you said, for 3 or 4 times a week, maybe to meet the bear or to, maybe almost fall off a cliff or not find any food that day or, whatever's going on. And that genetic memory is inside of us, propagating through our thoughts. But when you look at your cell phone 300 times a day and you're a negative thinker because you're fear-based, you're going to trigger that cortisol response, which again disrupts. We always tell people there's a curve to everything, right? There's a curve to everything in the body, and we need to work with that curve. So sleep is where you incubate those superpowers. But I have one more question before I ask you the final question.
Sure.
But most people think of intimacy as a pure emotional and physical, right? They think it's either you're intimate or you're just going out, you're just trying to get laid or whatever. They don't think of it as something else. But you're talking, and I've read this in so many books from India, that they talk about elevating cognition and spiritual connection. That in the right place, the bedroom is a spiritual place. It's not it's not just a place to, go have sex or whatever and then be done with it. That's why couples don't stay together. They don't have that intimacy that's coming on. So how can couples begin to tap into that deeper potential? Obviously, they can learn more from your website. You're going to tell us where that is. We're going to give some links below. But tell us, how can they get that deeper potential in their relationship? What do you find out there is working?
Well, the first thing that we like to do is what we call the birds and the bees for adults, where basically the most fundamental thing, just like love, as I mentioned earlier, is defined by context. Many things for sexuality and intimacy are defined by context in English. Frequently, first get on the same page with what your motivation is, because many times, and my mentor, Dr. McLevina would describe it in different ways, which are interesting. Men oftentimes when they're younger, view sexuality and sexual desire as though you're starving and you want a buffet. That's all. You just want to quench that hunger that you have. women, at least according to Kinsey and some other people, more cyclic approach that certain times of the month they will have just as strong or stronger a desire than men. But then at other times they would view it as though you're looking forward to a fine meal where you're going to have a good conversation. You do want to eat the food, but you're not starving, and you're not just going to go in and gobble everything up real quick. Women are oftentimes coming from that viewpoint. Men are coming, when they're younger, from the starving viewpoint. But there's also a commerce viewpoint that's embedded into our society where it's an exchange and a trade thing. And that causes a lot of trouble because that's deeply embedded in our Rockefellerian culture.
Yeah.
And so we buy more
on
stuff.
both sides,
Yes.
like if there's a fight, a lot of times we found, in our coaching other couples and stuff that the women might be wanting to withhold sex because their husband didn't do something they wanted or liked, and that's fitting into that exchange model instead of working together and communicating properly.
So same thing I tell our clinics. I say clients don't want a transaction, they want a transformation.
Yes.
Yes.
Your partner does not want a transaction, they want a transformation. And if you do it right and you have that experience, you have a transformation. So,
Yes.
when you have that transformation, you look forward to it, and then the rest, you can get through the tough times, because there's one thing we can count on in life: it's not going to go our way.
Exactly.
We're not making the big plans. We're making the small corrections. Or going with the flow or whatever's going on. So I appreciate you both being on the call, but I want to ask you, what have I not asked you? What are you dying to tell the BrainTap Nation about your device, or about just life in general, or about neurophysiology, sexual intimacy? What have I forgot to ask you?
Well,
I think the high massager combined with BrainTap is the ideal
that's
bedtime routine.
That's a win. I was going to say, as far as the getting on the same page sexually with your partner, that's the first step. Just getting on the same page, then knowing there is a spiritual aspect that you can achieve with your partner. What we usually recommend is people start out doing a hand massage where they just learn how to massage each other's hands. The giver, the one doing the massage, focuses on reading how their partner is responding, learning the technique, and asking the partner what feels good and what doesn't. The receiver focuses on feeling the massage and saying what feels good and doesn't. From that, we go to something called intimacy massage, which is mapping Masters and Johnson's method, sensate focus, to how the nervous system works. But basically, to achieve spiritual stuff, you have to achieve the physical stuff where you connect. And connecting is a different thing for different couples. But it's something that when you are with your partner, time stands still. And it's magical. And don't give up on that, because that's something I think every human deserves to experience. So that was the main thing. I could ramble on and on about that.
You said earlier,
stuff,
transformational.
A transformation. Yeah, you're absolutely right. You said it perfectly.
Well, hold on, BrainTap Nation, because we're going to be figuring out how to work this into BrainTap for sure. I have 88 acres too that I can show you here. We're building out a healing retreat center.
Oh,
and I
wow.
can just see some couple massage, some couples therapy weeks or
Absolutely.
weekends or something like that. And we're going to have 14 to 16 beds there, and we're going to have, it's going to be all holistic and healthy. And I have all my biohacking stuff. We have a 6,000 square foot lab, and
Wow.
we'd love to put this as a part of it in there. Just got to figure out how to get my one from the home there, because Dr. Leva has the other one. She's doing some research on that one. She has a lot of scarring and stuff. I'm sure she told you. So, and she's going to be using it on that. And my wife has a lot of scarring. I liked when you talked about the neck and the vagus nerve. That might be part of her deal. So I'm going to get her to start using it there. And but I think this was a great podcast, and hopefully, if you're here listening this long, then you must have liked it as well. So thank you for continuing on with us. Please like and share this. Get this to everyone you know that's in a relationship, because part of the problem is we live in a new age. Our brain was not created for the life we're living now. We have 4 reasons that our brain isn't working right: thoughts, traumas, and toxins. And then the 4th is technology. So when you think about technology, it can be good or bad. This is a good technology, something that can help you to release somatically, which means of the body. We're going to release it from the body so you can return to who you were, what was going on. No matter what trauma has happened to you, you're not the same person. Your body is changing at an incredible rate of 50 million cells per second. Your DNA, they now show that junk DNA that they said in 2003 was junk DNA, they now know from 2018 it's changing every 40 seconds, which means you're either upregulating or down-regulating your DNA. You're not the same person that started this podcast. So you're new and different, and it's a new time and it's a new era. So we have technology that can help us, because right now in this world of social media, we've lost our connection. We've lost our intimacy. We think it comes on likes and shares online. And now we have a tool that you've created, Steve and Wendy, which I appreciate you doing, that helps. And it has a lot of other therapeutic benefits. That just happens to be the one you started with, like you said. But there's a lot of, I think we could go into the lab and show so many ways it activates the brain. If you can activate the vagus nerve, you've got a tool that everyone needs, because most people, their vagus nerve is really hurting right now because it's being stressed, stamped out because of 24-hour news cycles, the stress in the environment, cell phones, screens, everything that's going on, people not sleeping. Two-thirds of the world isn't sleeping, so they're wondering why their brain isn't functioning right. So I want to congratulate you on that, and congratulate you listeners too. So please like and share this. Remember, we're on a mission to better 1 billion brains, and it's your brain we're talking to right now. So let's get better in your brain, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and get you on the right path. So until next time, please continue to better your brain and help your community to better their brains by being a great example and sharing brain fitness with them. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on our mission to better 1 billion brains. Follow at Dr. Patrick Porter on social media for updates, and remember to practice brain fitness every day.